Why, O people of the Noldor, why should we longer serve the jealous Valar, who cannot keep us, nor even their own realms secure from their enemy? And though he be now their foe, are not they and he of one kin? Vengeance calls me hence, but even were it otherwise, I would not dwell longer in the same land with this kin of my father's slayer, and of the thief of my treasure. Yet I am not the only valiant in this valiant people. And have ye not all lost your king? And what else have ye not lost? Cooped here in a narrow land between the mountains and the sea. Here once was light, that the Valar begrudged to Middle-earth. Shall we mourn here, deedless forever, a shadow folk, mist haunting, dropping vain tears in the thankless sea? Or shall we return to our home, in Cuivienen? Sweet ran the waters, under unclouded stars, and wide lands lay about, where a free people might walk. There they lie still, and await us who in our folly forsook them. Come away! Let the cowards keep the city! Fair shall the end be, though long and hard shall be the road. Say farewell to bondage, but say farewell also to ease. Say farewell to the weak. Say farewell to your treasures. More still shall we make. Journey light, but bring with you your swords, for we will go further than Arome, endure longer than Tolkas. We will never turn back from pursuit. After Morgoth, to the ends of the earth, war shall ye have, and hatred undying. But when we have conquered and have regained the Silmarils, then we and we alone shall be lords of the unsullied light, and masters of the bliss and beauty of Arda. No other race shall Oostus. Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Stan.
Hello and greetings.
And hello to Lexi's squad. So, hello Lexi.
Hello everybody. Hi guys, doing well?
Yep. So how about we just jump on in? And now this is where I don't fully know how we can start, as I think most people probably know a bit of the tale of Fëanor. But if you want, you could give a rough summary of Fëanor, as you're so skilled at that and you've done it enough times.
Yeah, I've found myself in that position a lot, trying to very quickly explain to people a very complicated little elf. All right, so assuming a relative comfort with what's in Lord of the Rings, and at least an awareness of what's happening in the Silmarillion, in the Undying Lands of Valinor, there were once 3 tribes of the High Elves. One of those tribes was the Noldor, and the king of the Noldor was called Finwë. He had a beautiful wife named Muriel, who had exactly 1 baby, and this baby was Fëanor. And after that, Muriel was so tired and so done with having children that she did the closest thing to dying that an elf could do. Her soul departed her body, and fled to Mondos and absolutely refused to come back out and resume her family life. So Finwë, her husband, was a little perplexed by this. After all, elves are not really supposed to die, especially not in the Undying Lands. So he petitions the Valar to allow him to remarry, and they allow him to remarry. So this is like maybe one in an entire historical record case of an elf who has a stepmommy, and that's Fëanor has a new mommy named Indis, and she goes on to have 2 sons and then possibly 2 to 3 daughters with Finwë. So Fëanor doesn't really like this. It breeds some resentment between him and the rest of his family, although he continues to be his father's favorite. Fëanor is very powerful, very mighty, very intelligent, good at technical things, crafting, which is kind of what the Noldor specialize in. And he... Huh?
I said, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of their whole vibe. Fëanor becomes very particularly interested. A very fiery. Fëanor, roughly translated, spirit of fire. He becomes very interested in the light of the 2 trees of Valinor. Remember, this is before the sun and the moon, so the trees are the things that give light to the earth. Captures the light of the 2 trees in 3 miraculous, indestructible jewels called the Silmarils. Morgoth, who is Sauron's boss, the kind of original big bad evil dark god of Middle-earth, sees these Silmarils and covets them, seizes an opportunity to kill Finwë, take the Silmarils, and return to Middle-earth with them. And Fëanor is so appalled at the murder of his father and the stealing of his favorite jewels that he swears a terrible oath to go and reclaim them. I guess I should back up here and mention that at this point he's acquired a wife and 7 sons, all boys. I mean, all sons are boys, but 7 children, all boys, so 7 sons.
All of whom
and,
are pretty tough personalities in their own right, which,
yes,
given that elves when elves give birth, they give more of themselves than what humans do. Nerdinel must have been quite the lady.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief, but Nerdinel, there's maybe 5 sentences written about her, and they're all pointing to someone who's very awesome, very steadfast of personality. And it says that her, specifically, I think this is Silmarillion, her spirit she imparted in part to some of her sons, but not all. So a couple of them kind of inherit her patience and her gentleness, but all of Fëanor's sons are pretty fiery blokes. They take after Daddy. They all swear Daddy's oath with him and go with him to Middle-earth, where they meet various ends. The other thing that has happened with Fëanor and specifically his eldest half-brother Fingolfin, is that they don't like each other very much. Fëanor's actually threatened to kill Fingolfin at one point, which is, as you can imagine, probably made Thanksgiving dinner just an absolute
nightmare,
absolute riot that year. And yes, accordingly, when Fëanor swears to pursue Morgoth with vengeance, Fingolfin, for a host of reasons, some pretty benign, others more maybe having to do with their rivalry, he insists on coming along with him. One of the problems is he's concerned about his people and his own children, even, who are wrapped up in Fëanor's rhetoric. He feels like maybe someone needs to go along who has a leveler head. Fëanor doesn't like this. He feels like Fingolfin is trying to win influence from him, which honestly, probably on some level he is. So Fëanor leaves him stranded. They come to this point where they have to cross the sea in some boats that they stole from a bunch of other elves with murder and arson and such. They come to this point. We'll just skim over the fact that in the process of swearing this oath and starting their pursuit of Morgoth, they've killed a bunch of people at this point, of their own people, and taken all of their ships.
As well as possibly Olwe, Lord of Alqualonde, I think it is.
Yeah, I feel like Olwe survives, because I feel like there's something about him and the Teleri at the end, at the War of Wrath, but that could just be...
Really?
They could have just been the Teleri decided.
I thought he doesn't show up again.
Versus Olwe.
I can never remember if
it's possible.
Sorry.
It's entirely possible. There's no direct mention of him being killed, but we don't know. I mean,
it's possible he shows
presumably,
up. Do go on.
Yeah, many people are killed, so it's not a good time. He's not a happy camper, whether he's dead or alive. So. But that's Olwe. He's Telerin, and has his own problems. Fëanor went in deciding to cross the ocean to Middle-earth in these stolen boats. He does so in the dead of night. He only takes his own family and his own loyalists. He leaves most of his people and his brother behind, which means that at this point, since they've been shut out of the actually civilized parts of Aman, the Valar have forbidden them to ever return. This forces his brother to undertake the crossing of the Helcaraxe, just an ice bridge, basically. Just do some glacier hopping all the way to Middle-earth. It takes them quite a while, depending on how you're counting the years, if it's solar or Valian. So he basically, by so doing, by taking the ships, leaving Fingolfin behind, and then burning all the boats once he gets there, he both traps himself and his sons. But then also kind of condemns his half-brother and his nieces and nephews to a horrible long journey in which many of them die. And the ones that don't die have to live with the trauma. So Fëanor's made several questionable decisions at this point. He arrives at Middle-earth and just basically runs headlong towards Morgoth. I don't know if he stops to have a snack first. It's the sense is that,
Doesn't
We
even
know that
pause
he,
for a sandwich or a Tim Hortons.
well, we know that he did pause, grab some Starbucks on the way to destroy the Dark Lord, be back by dinner. He does stop apparently to make some brief notes on the similarities between Quenya and Sindarin and the possible like evolution of their derivations. So we don't know about a sandwich, but he did have time to jot off a quick like draft of a linguistic thesis. So you can definitely tell that this is one of Tolkien's protagonists because they're also a skilled linguist. Because of course, all protagonists would be skilled linguists. Linguism is the best
Thing ever.
Linguistics is the best field of knowledge. Yes, but yes, he wastes very little time, regardless, in making a direct, full-on assault on Morgoth in his new fortress of, well, his relocated fortress of Angband. And this results rather predictably in his death by Balrog. So, after all that, lead up and the swearing of the Eternal Oath and everything, Feanor ends up dead by the end of really the first battle, his first serious battle of
near the slopes of Wethrin, I think it is, and he's just looking up at Thangardrin going, "Oh my gosh, this was a bad idea. We're not going to win this way."
I mean, couldn't they have just called Dr. Phil to help them solve the problem?
And their family, yeah.
Finway, at the very least, should have gone to some kind of parenting classes. Some sort of, like, family integration.
Or Jerry Springer.
Advising. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we know who the father is. The question is, who's the mommy?
Yeah, which I kind of want to examine what everything up to this point, just to pause for a moment, if you don't mind.
Right.
And
everything up to his death.
The thing with the two trees is, just to briefly go over them, is that they were basically created by Yavanna and kind of Nienna as well. And I always kind of took it as, like Morgoth's ring is Arda itself. He invested his essence into Arda, just as, Sauron created his one ring for our viewers. But I kind of got the impression that what maybe to an extent when it comes to the metaphysics, Feanor poured a lot of, maybe a part of the reason he's somewhat a little unstable is that he poured a great deal of himself into his 3 shiny rocks, his 3 Silmarils. I don't know what you think of that theory, where there's a part of him inside those Silmarils. And that's part of the reason, it's because there's Magnum Opus, but there's also a bit of he needs to get himself back in a way. Like a part of him is in them, and they're missing and desecrated by Morgoth, but it's a bit like a part of Feanor, kind of, his Fea, I think it is, his spirit kind of was by Morgoth. I don't know what you think of that theory.
I think, I don't want to lean into taking it too literally because the way that, for example, the operation of Morgoth upon Arda as a whole, and how that affects both. Yeah, it's quite complex, and then it's similar to, but not totally identical to Sauron with the rings, which we know that becomes a nightmare very quickly. If you're trying to figure out, if Sauron's power is X and the ring gives a magnification of 10%, it just becomes like a calculus problem practically, trying to figure out what power is located where and can be used by whom. So I definitely think that it's
Sauron with dispersing energy or whatever to the magical. Can you do that? How does that work? And their connection to him. So it's this convoluted.
He can continues to use power, which we know is kind of, leads to diminishment, whether you're a evil Vala or a good Vala or an evil Maya or a good, if you do a thing, that's one less thing than you can do total. But we also know that Sauron and even Morgoth to an extent, theoretically have the power to regenerate a little bit. At least this is an idea that Tolkien posited at one point, that even without their respective rings, if you want, they can still heal potentially. So I think that certainly that's a common theme. I mean, Tolkien himself notes that this is a common theme. If you create something very powerful,
You impart
then
yourself into
you've become dependent on it, to the effect that literally or metaphorically or somewhere in between, your power is now in that thing. And we see this with Feanor. Being an elf, he's not as concerned with power per se. He's more concerned with art and beauty. But of the elves, like we said, the Noldor are concerned with craft and technicality and that kind of thing. And, like later it's the Noldor in the Second Age that get ensnared by Sauron and make the Rings of Power. And Tolkien considers that a big no-no because they're very corruptive. They're too much invested in exerting their power over the world, even if their goal is to make the world beautiful. So I think looking at how Feanor reacts once he's made the Silmarils, it doesn't seem to have been good for him psychologically.
No.
He kind of becomes obsessed with them. He doesn't want anyone else to see them. He's made these great things, and you would think Feanor up to this point, like if he makes a thing, he wants to show it to everyone so they can all tell him how clever he is. But he hides them.
It's rather like Golem with the ring.
Yeah, well, and even like the ring, Sauron's ring, one of the few things that it said, because I've been doing a bunch of reading on this lately, one of the few places where the ring is said to have a power over Sauron is the fact that not even Sauron could have decided to destroy it. Everyone else, it's like Sauron can decide to turn invisible or not. Sauron can decide how he's going to use the ring, and you can't because you're just a lowly hobbit, kind of a thing. But the one thing that everyone has in common is if they have the ring, they cannot willfully destroy it, and that extends even to Sauron himself. So he's sort of an analogous process. He's obsessed with the ring.
He's a slave.
Feanor's obsessed with the Silmarils. Yeah, and then Morgoth is kind of his obsession is the whole earth, which is really a bummer for him because he can't ever possess it or dominate it to the extent that his companions who set their sights a little bit lower can more thoroughly overpower, like the ring or the Silmarils. Those can be possessed. Morgoth is never going to be able to fully possess the earth and all of material reality, so he's kind of out of luck even if things go really well for him.
Yeah. I think that
the poor guy.
There might be a matter of legacy involved. For example, you've got Feanor, his legacy, putting the Silmarils, it's all darkness. There's nothing good that comes of it, and everyone who touches it gets corrupted by what came before.
Well, yeah, except for, I think, Beren and Luthien to a large extent. They don't really get corrupted by the Silmarils, although they don't hold it for very long because, well, they pass it on to Thingol, who, that's a disaster in and of itself. And
right, it's Thingol who kind of names them in desire. Beren and Luthien, it's kind of like Sam. Sam isn't as affected by the ring as Frodo is because Sam is totally viewing the ring not as like my task, but Frodo's task, and I'm only holding it because I care what happens to Frodo.
I'm a sub.
I guess something. Huh?
I'm a substitute.
Yeah, he's subbing in. He doesn't ever really view it as his, even when he's carrying it and using it and even like putting it on. And he's able to just like give it back to Frodo with a little hiccup, but barely a hiccup. And so I think Beren and Luthien, they have their hiccups too, because, Beren gets the one that he needs to fulfill his oath. He's got it. It's great. And then he goes for the second one. He goes for the second one, and then the knife breaks because Doom is like, no, you can't have two. You only need one. And then that's what wakes Morgoth up is the knife breaking and hitting his face. And then they're like, this is not good. We got to get out of here.
Though I do think there is something to what Dan said about legacy, because, like you also mentioned, Feanor is obsessed with his jewels, with his craftsmanship. But I also think that given that he had 7 sons, there's obviously he wanted to impart more of himself to the world than what most elves probably did. So although I'm not saying not all, like every elf kind of wanted to impart something, but Fëanor, it's on a whole other scale, be it in linguistics,
For
with
sure.
the Silmarils, with his sons, and he kind of does treat, although at the start, given, as you mentioned in your Fëanorian video, which is really great, what I like is that you mentioned that he obviously did love his kids at some point, because otherwise he wouldn't have had so many. But I do think there is a certain ego there that, you know, they're his legacy. They're his, in a way.
And I think that this is something that, again, it changes over time. And
Yeah.
Fëanor creates a bunch of things, and then he creates and has all his sons, and then he creates the Silmarils. And after that, you know, again, we don't know a lot for sure, but it seems like his focus shifts to, okay, I've created them, I'm done creating, now I have to hold on to them and control them, and make sure that no one else can see them or use them. And I think that shift in attitude may have been mirrored in how he viewed his sons. I mean,
Yeah.
this is kind of, you know, this isn't quote canon per se. This is like Peoples of Middle Earth, I think, but there's this exchange he has with Nerdanel when they're about to leave. He and Nerdanel have been the elf version of divorced for a while now because she just couldn't handle his instability. And she's arguing that the youngest boys are too young and he should
she asked
leave
for at least
one of them. Yeah, she says, you know, you're taking all of the kids with you. You're leaving me helpless and alone here in a very dark Valinor, like literally very dark. You know, leave one of the boys with me. Don't take my whole family from me. And he very much seems to view this. Yeah, well, he views this from the perspective not of like what is best for not just for Nerdanel, but for the kids themselves. You know, no concern for, you're right, maybe he is a little young. Maybe I should leave one of them behind or spare one of them what's coming. What he doesn't maybe necessarily know what's coming, but he knows that it's not going to be like a quiet, restful picnic, presumably.
Yeah.
No, he instead seems to view it as, these are my sons. Yeah. I'm in control of them. They've all chosen to follow me. They're loyal to me and not you. It's like pulling a Denethor here. Amras is loyal to me.
He almost talks to her like she's trying to steal from him.
Exactly. Yeah, not like we are two parents who love our children. How can we make the best decision? But no, these ones are mine. You renounced your claim, so to speak. Which is, I feel like he can't have started out that way, but no. I think by the end, that was where he was headed.
I do agree. I think that he probably, there was probably a time in his marriage to her that he probably would have gone with the mentality, okay, let's talk about what's fair, to an extent. Or even if he didn't, if Finwë or someone told him, listen, you gotta meet her halfway, he would have at least considered it and then kind of opened up a dialogue. But by the time of the flight of the Noldor, he's going, no, we are not having a discussion. We are, you know, they're mine. You renounced your claim. You didn't get anything. Which
and one
is
of the
worst
reasons
custody arrangement in Middle-earth history.
Yeah, it really is. Well, because again, according to the same possibly rejected draft, unfinished kind of story, he takes the twins with him to Valinor. One of them, or not to Valinor, from Valinor to Beleriand. One of them has second thoughts and is actually sneaking back on board the ship and considering traveling back. So, you know, maybe Nerdanel was right and this boy wasn't ready to go, you know, leave his home and family forever and embark on a doomed quest. But when Fëanor lights the ships on fire, again, is that like, there's no turning back and also no one can possibly come to our aid. Again, this is not canon necessarily. This is just an idea that was played with, presented at one time, might have been considered. But yeah, he burns that son alive. That's his first. That's the first of the sons to go in this version. Is the one that Fëanor himself accidentally kills in his sort of spiteful attitude towards his half brother. Yeah, the first one. Another one bites the dust.
Gets to say, oops.
Yeah. Oh, no, not the first.
Well, everything else he mostly did purposely. I guess
that's fair.
This is almost the first time he kind of
willingly says oops.
Yeah. He might say
yeah,
oops.
he doubles down after it too, which I think is like, you just
Yeah.
have to be so far gone. He's clearly distressed, but then he kind of like shoves it all down and says, well, if he didn't want to get barbecued, he shouldn't have been trying to sneak off like that. It's like, Feanor, my man, like, I know you're better than this, or I thought you were.
Yeah. Well, if you consider what he does in, like, I know it's not all considered canon, the Ragnarok of Tolkien's world, Dagger Deckarath, and how he willingly destroys the Silmarils, there is something good in him. It's just, like, at that point, he'd probably go, oh, yeah, my bad. I really shouldn't have done that. But I think that at the point where he's at in the Flight of the Noldor and whatnot, and the Darkening of Valinor, and at the time of the burning of these swan boats, he's kind of too far gone, like you said. He's regarding it as, well, he shouldn't have been trying to sneak off. And sorry about that, our dog tends to
it's all right.
bark when he sees squirrels outside. But
Squirrels are the worst.
What?
Squirrels are the worst.
Oh, yeah. They're his arch enemies because they keep coming up right up outside of his reach when he's on the leash and just chattering and chittering at him until he just goes nuts. So
no, they're big
so
jerks.
he'd probably end up treating them to the same treatment as, I think it's Amras, who gets barbecued. I can't remember which of the twins.
He switches back and forth in that essay so much between which one is the eldest and which one's Umbarto and which one's Ambarto, so I don't even honestly know.
Stay tuned next time for the rest of this conversation, with the next time being about the sons of Feanor. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to not only smash that like button and that subscribe button here, but go to Girl Next Gondor's channel and smash that subscribe button and like button on any of her videos as though you were Morgoth smashing Fingolfin into itty bitty pieces.